Thomas and Mack Center here. We used to play in a little small place called the Convention Center. But we opened up there, we hadn't been in the NCAA tournament in 5 years, hadn't been ranked in 5 years. And we had a great season. We won our first 24 games in a row. We were the first team that was ranked #1 in UNLV's history in the country, the first team. From that point on, UNLV went on and won 10 straight NCAA tournament appearances, 4 Final Fours, 3 Final Fours, and the national championship. At one point, you could arguably say they had the greatest basketball program in the whole country, and everybody was envious of the kind of program we had here at UNLV. So the question I ask is, how did we get to that point? How did we become such a great program? And my father used to say, the only way you can be a great team is if you can build great pride with your team, within the community, within the school, and within the university. You have to have great pride for one another. And if you do, you're going to bond together, you're going to work hard, you're going to overcome adversity, and you're going to be able to accomplish great things. Well, how do you create that great pride? You start it by appreciating the fact you're at a wonderful institution here. You got to play in the Thomas and Mack Center. You got the greatest city to be around. We built upon the things that made this community so great. And then every team that came after us felt they had to live up to the pride that we had built in the 1982-83 team. It was rebel pride. You couldn't go anywhere without people talking about how proudful they were of being a runner rebel, being a part of this program here. Well, after my father left, the program went complete downhill, and people keep saying, how come they can't build it back up again? And it seems like it really should. You have the same university, you even have better facilities. The city's even more enjoyable across the country. They've got better players. But the reason why is it's so hard to build that pride that was instilled by my father with the players of being proud, of being a runner rebel. We were a runner rebel. Nobody could take that away from us. And we love that. But it's hard to build that back up. And I see that's what's happened to our country. We got the greatest country in the whole world. Nobody can argue with that. Made our mistakes along the way. But we have been the most benevolent country in the world. We have put more of our soldiers' lives on the line and have died to protect their freedoms around the world. We're the greatest economic force that's ever been made of any country in the history of the world, and we give so much of our resources to other countries around the world. Why don't we have great pride of being an American? And I see that's what Donald Trump is trying to do, and I see that's why he was able to, despite some of his comments that he had made, he was able to create a loyal following, people that wanted to support him and support what he's talking about, because he was talking about creating pride back in the United States of America, where we can walk around and say how proud we are to be a part of this country, like we should be. And people can resonate with that. But once you lose that pride, it's hard to build it back up, and that's what he's facing right now. There's resistance from across different facets of the country, that either they don't like Donald Trump, they don't like the Republican Party, they don't like certain policies and things he's trying to accomplish. So they want to create a division where maybe you feel a little bit less proud about being an American. Now look, when the other side was in office, the Republican Party probably didn't, and I certainly didn't, agree with a lot of the things that our president had done, but we were still the United States of America. We were better than any other country in the whole world. I was proud to be an American, always that. We need to get that unity, that type of feeling with all Americans here in our country, support what the president is doing, and let's make this the best country again in the world. Like he said, make America great again. Build that great pride that we saw here at UNLV in the 80s and early 90s. We'd love to see that back here again, but we can get it in our country. But we have to come together. We can't have divisions. We can't have hatred over little small things. It's funny, you see the country come together when there's a catastrophe like 9/11 and things like that. Why don't we come together all the time when we have any kind of differences and stuff, and bond together and show the great spirit of the United States of America? I'm running for office in the United States Senate. I'm running in a very contentious primary. I am running on a message that I think is what will resonate and what is important to the people, not only around the country, but primarily here in Nevada. We're going to run on a message that we're going to be proud to be Americans. We're going to take care of Americans first. We're going to work to try to bring back the middle class Americans and let them reap the rewards, the benefits, and the opportunities that only America has provided. It's America First policies that Donald Trump talks about. I will tell you, I have disagreed with some of the comments that President Trump has made, or more so when he was on the campaign trail. But let's talk about his policies. Who doesn't think that NATO should pay their fair share of the expenses for protecting the NATO countries out there? You know, the United States of America pays 4% of its gross domestic product when they're only obligated to pay 2%. Only 3 other countries pay their 2%, which is what they're supposed to. The other 24 countries don't pay it. And you never heard that before. I didn't know that. Did any of you guys know that until Donald Trump made a big deal about it? Well, he got up in front of NATO and he called out the Chancellor of Germany, the Prime Minister of England, and in France, and he said, hey, you guys got to start paying your fair share. Doesn't that make you proud? And say, hey, look, we're Americans, we're doing our share, you guys do your share. You know, we start talking about, hey, workers here that can't compete overseas because we're either taxing our countries too much here or allowing other products to come in our country and don't tax them. Why don't we take care of Americans first, American workers first? You know, we work our tail off in this country. We provide a higher minimum wage than any other place around the world. We provide better working conditions. So we already have an additional cost. Why do we want to put the workers at a disadvantage by imposing higher taxes on their products and making it more difficult for the companies to succeed? These are the things that Donald Trump's talking about as America First policies, the things I believe so strongly about, the thing that I believe that whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, whether you believe some of Donald Trump's rhetoric or not, we should all believe as an American that this is the best thing for our country, the best thing we can do to make America great again. We should bond together and take great pride in being American. I hope I get that opportunity to be in Washington, D.C. in 2018. And if I do, I'm going to be the proudest person out there, and we're going to bring, hopefully, a ray of hope and encouragement and excitement to the people I represent here in Nevada. That being said, I'd love to take any questions you have, but anything that you guys might want to ask me personally. Yes?
I wasn't planning to speak tonight. This one caught my ear. My name is Corey. I'm an MBA student. I'm also in the screenwriting program at Exeter. I heard, you guys can correct me on this, that when the porn industry moved to Nevada, they made a financial investment in UNLV. Now I'm hearing, woe is us, we're Christians, we're now on the losing side. I don't agree with that. I'm actually laughing at the irony, because 20 years ago, everything was lopsided. Now, the adult movie industry staples itself to the Democrats politically. My question is UNLV taking money instead of having an influence?
I have no idea. I haven't heard that.
The only reason I asked is we all know that the NCAA investigated your dad, and that did have an influence on the history of college basketball. Is the porn industry now interfering?
I love that comparison. The porn industry, just like the I'm not very important about the industry. So really, look, I don't know about that. You know, I don't want to get off too much on my dad, but the NCAA investigated them here, but we had a great program without having to buy any players. They all came here because they wanted to be a running rebel. They wanted to be a part of this great program. They wanted to be a part of the city because you know what? They had what my dad said you had to have a great program. They had great pride in our community, great pride in UNLV, and great pride in the state of Nevada. And that's why we had a great program. Yes.
First of all, I just want to say how much I respect you for saying that you didn't know. Just because I'd rather have somebody say that they didn't know or that they don't want, rather than just pull an answer out of their butt. To me, that is so much more honorable and
I appreciate that. Either that or I didn't want to be aligned with the porn industry.
It's just everybody always gets a hard time. It's like, you don't know everything. I don't expect you to be perfect. I just expect you to be honest. And as long as you're honest, you're somebody I can vote for.
You got a great point I wanted to make. And thank you, I appreciate that. And to me, that's the whole part of what's wrong with politics right now. And I see this so much in politics, and it makes me sick. And I understand why people have such low opinion of politicians. If a politician, first of all, you should be a public servant. You're being elected to go back and represent the people you serve. And you go out and you campaign, you promise something. You should be obligated. If you have any kind of morals, ethics, or want to look in the mirror and have any respect in yourself, you should go back and vote the way you campaigned and promised you would. That's called having true conviction. Now, I've campaigned a few times and lost a few races, but I've always talked about the things I have true conviction for, what I'll do if I go back to Washington, D.C. Stand up for those. Quite honestly, there's going to be some you don't agree with. My wife doesn't agree with a lot of what I say, but she knows what I write out and being honest to her. And I think that's all you can ask for a politician. You need somebody who's honest to you. The worst thing you can be in life is somebody flip-flopping around. My dad used to say the worst thing you could be in life is a phony. You could always teach he said you could always teach a crook not to steal. You can't teach a disloyal person to be loyal. So if you have somebody who's lying to you, disloyal to you, it's the worst thing you could be in life. And unfortunately, there's too many politicians like that represent our country. Yes.
So speaking of flip-flopping, taking it from a national to a local level, John Hambrick signed the No Tax Pledge in 2014, pushed through the largest tax increase in Nevada history. Very similar parallels between your race and his. You're both running against entrenched incumbents that haven't done their job appropriately. Wanted to see if you had any thoughts on the Assembly 2 race and if you'd like to take this opportunity to endorse Jim.
You just want me to get killed? I'm running the statewide race, going to make interviews all over the place. Listen, I've never been shy in saying this. If you campaign on something, you ought to do what you campaign on. People are sick and tired of politicians who promise one thing when they run for office and do the exact opposite once they get there. I like Jim Hamrick, or I have liked him for many, many years. I've known him on the campaign trail. I was more disappointed in what he had done because of the positions he had taken previously, being a staunch anti-tax person. For him to have taken that step and go for that tax increase, I thought was a horrendous thing to do. And I'm going to tell you also, I mean, for the first time in 89 years, and this isn't a partisan thing, but this is the Republican Party, and they stand for less taxes, the less size of government, lower size of government. First time in 89 years we control the Assembly, Senate, and Governor's office, and the only major piece of legislation they passed is the largest tax increase in state's history. I believe that was being dishonest to the voters who voted the Republicans into that session. Jim Hamrick was obviously one of them.
Yep.
So was Mike Roberson, who I ran against in 2016, and I said the same thing in that campaign. It isn't so much he voted for the tax increase, he had signed a no tax pledge and promised he would. And I think being dishonest is the worst thing you can be, much more than maybe having some different views than the common, normal Republican would have. Yes?
It's going to need more context. Regarding states' rights, though, and on how they apply to drug laws and civil asset forfeiture. Current Attorney General is vocally saying that he would do things that would not respect states' rights regarding those two things, and actively doing things that do not respect states' rights in regards to civil asset forfeiture. Yes. So civil asset forfeiture here in Nevada in 2015, our state legislature passed a bill requiring our law enforcement agencies to have a conviction before they just take people's stuff.
Okay.
Civil asset forfeiture, for people who don't know, you get pulled over and you've committed some crime, they'll just take your stuff.
Yeah.
If you want to get it back, you have to go through the legal process, pay hundreds of dollars. Many times they'll take something like a stereo that costs $50. You're not going to spend $900 to file a complaint to get your $50 stereo. In 2015, they passed this law requiring convictions, and so that they can't just take your stuff. However, what's been going on is the federal law enforcement agencies will tag on to some pending investigation, and our law does not apply to them. So then they can take those things, and the proceeds of selling those things off can then go to the local law enforcement agency anyway, undermining our state's rights. In addition to that, our Attorney General has also made statements regarding drug laws for states like ours, and saying they're basically not going to be respected. He hasn't done much towards it, but he's saying it, and that's something. Now, to your point of campaigning on something and doing it, campaigning as a Republican implies some commitment to support of states' rights. Yes?
Republicans have a very strong belief in the 10th Amendment of state rights, yes.
So,
But again, you're going to have some Republicans who don't believe in the entire platform, but most do, yes.
that's a pretty central one. Sure. Respecting states' rights is a pretty central one, and it's one that is used to argue for things like religious rights and such.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying there's a wide range of platforms, and just because you're Republican doesn't mean you agree with all of them. But yes, it is a center tenement of the Republican Party, sure.
Right. So my question, thanks for bearing with me through the context, is if elected, what would you say about these things? So how would you go about doing anything about protecting our rights as a representative of that?
Well, first of all, you're talking about a lot of things that you say the Attorney General here's doing what he's allowing. That would be dealing with the state legislature or the state constitutional offices, and I wouldn't have any involvement with that. You mentioned a little bit, I'm not familiar with all the things you said, but you mentioned a little bit about how you say the federal government is using our law.
He was referring to Sessions as the AG, not Waxhaw.
Yeah.
Well, we talk attorneys. Oh, I thought,
Yeah.
okay, U.S. attorney, okay. So you're saying what they're using federal laws to come into Nevada and not apply the state laws and take,
Allowing local law enforcement agencies to piggyback on a federal law enforcement agency to take things.
well, again, there should be a separation of what the federal laws are, and they should be applied by the federal government. There's not going to be federal laws that apply to the states. They're not, that's not a states' rights issue. But they shouldn't be able to use the state laws to do that. I'm not familiar enough with what the examples you're saying.
Well, that was what they attempted to do, was to use the state laws to do that.
I
They created a law.
I certainly would be in favor of the federal government using state laws to change, to give them more ability to confiscate the forfeiture rules. I'm not in favor of the forfeiture rules either. I think there's been a very well-documented abuse of those procedures. But I don't know enough about the examples you're talking about. So,
Okay.
If we can, only one or two more questions and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. So for a more clear and concise question, do you think the federal government should be allowing local law enforcement agencies to take advantage of their things like that? And do you think the federal government should be pressuring states
Of course
by
not.
threatening federal
Of course
action
not.
on it? Okay.
of course not. And I mean, again, I wouldn't be in favor of it. Whatever authority I would as a legislator.
Is that the same? Would you answer the same for drug laws? That the federal government should not be infringing on
But
what
there's
is drug laws?
there's federal drug laws too. And then you can't say the federal drug laws don't apply just because you're in the state.
So you think our marijuana laws are?
I think it's not just ours, there's all kinds of states around the country, and there's a conflict between the state laws and the federal laws, and they both apply. It's how you enforce them. And I think at some point you're gonna see the rest of the states follow with what Nevada and the other states are doing. You're gonna see a rollback on it. But you can't say right now, you can't say you're not gonna enforce federal laws. That's like saying you don't enforce the sanctuary city laws because you don't agree with them. There's federal laws that apply to the states, the activities of people in one state, for all the states. And you can't just ignore those because state laws are a little different.
Would you say that there's any more weight put to a state law that's put to vote by the people, as our marijuana law was, rather than by representative?
Speaking of
I
marijuana,
think-
somebody's bogarting all the time.
I'm sorry.
I think in this nation, we have a supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution. So you're getting into the intricacies of a problem that we face, the powers between the federal government and the state government. And Danny has answered the question, so I think we have any other questions?
I was wondering if you're elected, what your plans are for Nevada's public education system? What do you plan to do with
Yeah,
that?
again, the public education system is really the state's issue, but I believe the federal government, and I believe the state government should, and I'm a big advocate of the school choice programs. Look, we tried the same public school system now for decades and decades, and it's getting worse. I don't see why we wouldn't try something different. And when you're talking about taking the funds that the ESA accounts would from the public schools, you're taking half of the funds that come in per student, and you leave half there when the student leaves, so the school system actually has more money. I'd like to see this done on the federal level, where the federal level would, they give so much money into the states for the federal programs, they can allow that money to be used as a school choice. I'm a big school choice proponent. I've had my kids in private school and public school. They left the public school because the education system was so bad, and I wasn't gonna let my kids fall behind like they were. There's a couple, somebody over there.
Me. Okay, so I'm not gonna go into all the federal, state. I know there's stuff going on federally, as everyone does, with our healthcare and the healthcare bill. But I want to ask what you're gonna do for me, for not no offense to the rest of y'all in here, but for me personally. I'm an African American woman, so we know the history of African Americans with healthcare, and I want to know what we're going to do to protect and provide for the people who aren't able to afford to go to a physician on a regular, who are in college, who struggle making $8.25 to get through to pay their bills and can't afford to go pay $50 a month for birth control. So I just want to know what are you planning to do to protect me?
You're not gonna like this question, this answer at all. I'm gonna
That's okay, that's
I'm gonna
straight up.
tell you, I'm gonna tell you, I think the identity politics is what's destroying our country. When we start talking about what we're going to do for one segment of society, we're going to place the burdens on another segment of society. What I hope to do, what I will do if I get elected, I'm going to go back and vote for laws that I believe will help the entire country the best that we possibly can. There's going to be a give and take across the board. I believe that everybody in America should be able to have the ability to get health care treatment.
But what is that gonna do for, I'm not in
Well, I'm just trying to
agreement,
finish
but
this. I think everybody in
for the-
America should have the ability to have some type of healthcare treatment. But when you're talking about imposing 300% increases on middle-class Americans for their premiums, 650% increases on their deductibles, and 500 for the copay like my family has, I think you're now taking away from one segment of society and forcing the whole burden on them. There's got to be a better answer than what we see right now, where the middle-class Americans is shouldering the vast majority of the burden of our current healthcare system.
Understanding that, but that did not answer my question. I actually asked personally, because I said forget everyone else in this room, because I asked for
You said
myself
yourself,
first. Yes, but that's what I said, ask myself, and knowing the history, and because you're a politician, I know you know your history. What are you doing for us who are of low income, who aren't able to go and use our spending?
I absolutely answered the question. I think we need to, you may not like it, but that's the answer. I don't believe anybody should not be able to get health care in our country. And we have to provide a forum for them to do that. The Obamacare Affordable Care Act is not the answer. It is forcing middle-class Americans to buy insurance that they can't afford or can't use. That is happening. My health insurance premiums for my family of 6 is twice as much as the cost of my mortgage for my home insurance. If you don't think that's ridiculous, I think it is and needs to change. I don't agree with the current program.
So what's the answer?
Well, the answer is if it benefits the society.
Well, what is the answer?
It
To
benefits.
benefit the society.
I can give you my health care plan. It'll take about 15, 20 minutes. I'll even sit later to talk with you here if you'd like to, but I'm not going to. The only question on this, I give you the best answer I can.
Last question.
Real quick.
Last question, there's one more.
All right, so I think what my thing is like, how do you keep, because I understand that the narrative was told to everybody that, Obama, whether you like him or not, I mean, I think where people kind of got that bad taste is when that happened, when it was like, oh, healthcare, because he kind of pushed for a little hard. And a lot of you guys probably got a little bad taste, and a lot of numbers were thrown, that's not necessarily true or untrue, and it did hurt, people's incomes. I think a lot of these social programs, because as I go around campus and I start to talk to actual human beings who aren't just like, oh, well, what about, I'm screw everybody else, because the problem is it's a society, like you said, and it all works together, all right? Does anyone not agree with that statement?
Yeah.
So
It all works
what's
together.
your question?
So the question is, how do you keep it from turning in on itself when you're cutting all these social programs?
But you're not cutting the programs.
But you are. And I can bring you papers of.
Let him answer the question. You asked your question, let him answer.
Give me the floor. You are absolutely not cutting programs. What you're doing is
But
you
that's
are.
lying.
No, you're
You just
lying.
lied.
You don't know what you're talking
Okay,
about.
so I just walked around here and found out.
Okay, the healthcare plan that
Okay.
they talked about.
I'm sorry, go ahead and answer.
I'm trying to.
Okay.
The healthcare plan, which you were alluding to when they're saying they're going to cut Medicaid and these other programs, it doesn't cut Medicaid, it reduces the spending of Medicaid. In fact, the first Senate plan where Dean Heller got up on stage and said, I'm not going to support this plan because it cuts Medicaid, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of people taken out of the program. That's not true. It was going to increase Medicaid $400 billion over the next 10 years. Now, you may not think that's enough of an increase, and I understand the arguments. They said healthcare costs are going up too much. There's going to be more people on Medicaid, but I don't think that necessarily should be the case. The more people we have working, the better jobs we have, the less people on Medicaid. And in fact, from 2016 to 2017, we've seen a reduction of people on Medicaid. So that goes back to the question and the problem in healthcare, which is what I've been saying all along. The biggest problem is the cost of healthcare. That's why Medicaid needs more money, it's the cost. It isn't more people. That's why middle-class Americans are paying so much more money for their health care and they can't afford it. We've got to do something to rein in the cost. That's the issue. It's not the cutting of programs, it's the cost to everybody. Let me answer it now.
All else respectfully, like previously. You did say something that kind of made me a little curious. You said you believe every American deserves healthcare, which in a perfect utopia that'd be amazing. However, it's really hard to have a globalized healthcare system. So my question to you, because that is something that's usually a more leftist ideal.
No, it's not.
So my question is,